Welcome to the Winning Family Podcast with Rodney and Michelle Gage, a podcast designed to help you build winning relationships in your marriage and with your kids. My name is Dr. Linda Travelute, and I'm your host for the Winning Family Podcast, and we want to say thank you for joining us. In fact, it would mean the world to us if you'd subscribe to our podcast, rate it, and review it to let us know if you find the content helpful and encouraging. And also be sure to share these podcasts with friends, because guess what? They need it just as much as you do. And at the end of today's podcast, this is so special, we're going to share with you how you can get a free copy of this book called The Double Win by Rodney Gage. It'll help you win at work and at home, and we want to get a copy to you absolutely free. Yeah, I said absolutely free. So today, I'm excited. I'm joined by Rodney and Michelle Gage, and we're going to talk about the 4 statements to building security in your marriage. Guys, this is a big topic. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Let's dive in.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a big topic, but excited. This is important, and I think it will be a great help and source of encouragement to a lot of couples out there. Yes. And whether you're thinking about getting married, whether you are married with kids, blended family situation, single parent, listen, these are some important things that we're very passionate about, and I think will be helpful and really, hopefully, kind of change the trajectory of many relationships, because these 4 things are really, really crucial.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's no shock, I think, that a lot of marriages are on shaky ground. Mm-hmm. So to provide security is a very needed thing right now. So I'm so glad you're going to cover this topic. And the first one, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think it's really the most important thing.
Yeah.
You know, if you could just summarize it in one word, it would be the word security, because without question, it is the number one goal in any marriage. For that marriage to be successful, there has to be a high level of security. In fact, we had a situation in our home that maybe you can describe the situation with the security.
From my perspective,
yeah,
or from
issue
your perspective?
that.
Oh gosh! In the middle of the night, the alarm goes off at like 2:30 in the morning, and that has never happened in the home in which we live, and it freaked us out. And you prepared yourself, and you started heading down the stairs, and I heard.
Had my gun.
We'll just say he had his gun, and I hear bullets flying, and
What?
I'm like, oh my gosh. And so the alarm company is calling us, and so I'm on the phone with the alarm company, and I hear bullets hitting the floor, and
Wait. The bullets weren't coming out of the gun. They were falling
coming
on the floor.
out of the gun, but they were not firing from the front of the gun. So they were flying out as he's cocking the gun. Anyway, crazy
Like Barney
story.
Five.
So I'm like, yes, send the police. And because I'm thinking, yeah, obviously we are not experienced in this situation, and we have a lot to learn. But long story short, we called off the police. All was well. We had a faulty alarm system that one of the sensors had fallen off of the door in the middle of the night. Craziest thing, but it was quite hilarious after I got over my adrenaline rush. Oh my goodness, it was very scary as I was hearing those bullets hit the ground. Obviously, I haven't been in a home situation, heard a gun go off in a home. I just heard bullets hit the wood floor, and I thought he was shooting his gun. So yes, but we were safe and sound. But and even growing up as a child, I remember a situation that happened where we had a home, and a brand new home. We'd put in this security system, and we did not set it. And we came home one day from church. It was in the evening, and in the middle of the garage was all of our valuables, and we had been broken into, and they were taking off with our things. And we're like, why did we not set the alarm? And we need security not only for our physical homes, but in our home we need security, as you said, Linda. More than ever before, we need to live in security, as I've heard you say, Rodney. In security, live in a home with security versus in having insecurity in our lives or in our relationship. So I'm excited that we get to talk about that.
Yeah, and there's one thing to have physical security, but it's another thing too to have the emotional security, which is really, I think where most couples end up struggling the most is because there's some unmet needs, which obviously leads to that sense of insecurity, emotional insecurity. And so that's what I want to kind of take a few moments to unpack, because what we've learned after, well, we're getting ready to celebrate, 31 years of marriage. So here we go.
That's right.
We just have learned from pastoring with, walking through so much with couples and challenges, that when needs are met, when the emotional needs are met, the relational needs are met, when there is that sense of security in that relationship, what does that do? It produces healthy, positive, productive thoughts about your marriage, about your relationship.
Right.
It provides, positive emotions, which therefore leads to positive behavior. It's the way we carry ourselves in the relationship, because it's all positive, because we have a sense of trust and a high level of security that we've established. However, when that's broken, the opposite is also true. So when needs go unmet, what does that do? Well, it produces negative or unhealthy thoughts about ourselves, about our spouse, about our marriage, our circumstances, which leads to negative emotions. And unfortunately, when now all of a sudden you're thinking about it, you're dwelling upon it, you feel down, defeated, discouraged, depressed, all of those negative emotions, which what? Leads to negative behavior. Sometimes we say things, we do things out of the unhealthy or toxic emotions that we're wrestling with, and the negative, thoughts that we're constantly, rehearsing in our minds, all because we feel insecure in the relationship. So how do we build security? How can we help create that safeguard, if you will, in our marriage to protect, from the security breach, we were just talking about a while ago? How can we make sure in our relationship we have that sense of security? How can we meet each other's needs? So I think there are 4 specific things that we can unpack here that will help. I like to say 4 statements that couples can practice and apply to help kind of foster security in those relationships.
That's good. So what's the first statement?
Well, the first statement is the statement that I think is, kind of a natural and somewhat of a no-brainer, but it's the statement of I care about you.
Right.
It's that it's the caring of what we say and how we behave, our actions. So, we can say things that communicates that we don't care, or it's things that we don't do that communicates that we don't care. But when we say things that are intentional to communicate, I care about you. When we do things that are intentional that says that I care about you, what is it doing? It's putting value on the relationship. It's putting value on the person. Why? Because we sincerely and genuinely care about each other. And because we care about each other, we go the extra mile.
Yes.
And so we did that in a dating relationship. It's funny how it's natural when, we're in that courtship phase. And because we naturally care about each other, we're extra sensitive, we're extra intentional, we're extra creative, and so it's all of those things that we put into it on the front end, but we have to continue that. And it's hard, it's hard to do that. We often say that love leaks, and I won't get into all that, but it dissipates over time.
It does.
So,
it takes time to care. It takes time to think through and to care. And in our culture in which we live, it's fast-paced world. We kind of slowed down for a couple of years, but I think we're kind of picking back up again. And it takes time to think about other people. It takes time to put someone else first and to truly care for someone else. So to think through what they need and to be intentional to help meet a need and to care for them. It definitely takes effort and time.
Yeah.
And don't you think too, to communicate the idea that I care about you, people could be very good at saying, hey, I care about you. I care about that. I care about what you're dealing with. But then we need to line it up with actions that that really model the idea, because some people could get caught up in just verbalizing it, not follow through with the action. What does that look like? What does that look like for a couple? Any ideas?
Well, I mean, I think it's just being thoughtful. So if I know something is important to Michelle, if I know like her schedule and she's got a full day, and I can do something that I know that she probably wouldn't have time to do in her normally it would be something she would do, but because of this particular day and her schedule and all the responsibilities she has, that's where I can step in and I can do something for her so that she doesn't have to worry about that or carry about that, or maybe I just surprise her with it by doing something for her, cleaning the kitchen, after dinner, and
it's the best.
Or unloading the dishwasher, or folding some clothes that she didn't have time to mess with or didn't want to mess with, or
and
whatever.
Just to be clear, I don't do all the laundry in the house. Just to be clear. Well, I do my own laundry because I cannot do yours well enough. But you are very helpful and caring to sometimes do my laundry for me and to help me.
It takes teamwork to make the dream work.
That's right. Just to be clear, he's very, very intentional about how things are laid out and which things can be dried in the dryer and which things cannot.
Important.
Yes, that's huge.
Important.
He's passed a few things down to me after I dried them in the dryer.
Yeah.
That's okay. But I just want to make sure it's clear that I don't do all the laundry and that you're sometimes helping, because it's actually you coming over and doing my personal laundry for me, which
awesome.
is wonderful.
Yes.
Well, nothing makes a relationship or marriage feel insecure more than when there is a perception of we don't care.
Yeah. Right.
That's where we're taking each other for granted.
Yeah.
And that's when we begin to, goes into a whole nother thing, but just honor is something that's very important. And so when you express honor to each other, what are you doing? You're placing worth, weight, value on somebody. You're holding someone in high esteem. So therefore, you are intentional. You care about somebody because you honor, you respect someone. Mm-hmm. But the moment you begin to take someone for granted, all of a sudden now you are no longer placing high value on someone. And therefore, it's easy to start showing disrespect, which communicates what? I don't care. Right. And that can become very destructive, and that ball can become unraveled very, very quickly. And so we often say keep honor high, anger low, because what happens is that the moment we feel insecure, it's easy for us to point our finger and point out all the things that person didn't do or isn't doing, or what they should have done or what they could have done. And what happens, we begin to ridicule, criticize, condemn, or pointing our finger, all for the very sake of saying, I don't feel valued. I don't feel like you care. And all of that breeds insecurity.
Yes.
And so just by what we say and by what we do can communicate volumes in a healthy, positive way that I care about you. I care about us. I care about our marriage. I care about our children. I care about our family, our home. Right. All of that's huge. And what does that do? It builds security in our relationships, because if you don't, then anger, resentment, bitterness, those sorts of things can come into the picture, which is what we want to get rid of. That's what Ephesians 4 says. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, and all types of evil behavior. Instead, what does it say? Be kind to each other, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, just as God in Christ has forgiven us.
That's good.
So we have to just be intentional with that and communicate, hey, our marriage matters and you care.
I care about what you care about.
Absolutely.
I care about what hurts you. I care about what you're thinking about, and sending a text or a thought. I think we've talked about on podcasts before, of maybe even a scripture that you read that reminded you of something, a situation that your spouse is going through, just sending a note and for them to receive that maybe in the work day and say, I care.
That's so good. Those little things count, don't they?
Absolutely.
Make a big difference.
That's
So we're
right.
talking about 4 statements to build security in your marriage. And the first is, I care about you. And then the second is, I trust you. So let's break that down. I trust you.
That's right. I think that's one that can come out very quickly in a marriage, even, when you've just been married a few months, that we bring into our marriage, like it or not, the relationships that maybe our parents had or the home that we grew up in. We imprint on those relationships, we learn from them, and we start to execute our relationship along the same lines as what we saw growing up. And that's something that we have to be really aware of. So when it comes to, I trust you, if you've been in a situation or a home or in a place where you've seen a lack of trust, where you didn't trust your parents and they didn't trust each other, and it can easily, with the best of intentions, you're going into a relationship, you initially are going to carry with you that. And there's some things that my parents went through when I was a little bit older, actually in college, and I was lacking security. I was lacking that trust, and I had no idea. It didn't come out until we got married.
Wow.
And I all of a sudden would become angry and frustrated and all these emotions. And it was something that I was holding on to that I didn't even know. And so we had to kind of work through. Rodney was the most trustworthy person. He didn't do anything wrong. It was just that in my mind, I started writing stories and they were not true. And so we had to work through that, and I had to learn how to trust him. And I think that a lot of relationships, I've seen this with young couples, they'll hit the rocky road early and they'll give up early instead of just working through it and saying, this is an issue, a trust issue that I personally have, that I got to work through so that I can trust you. And when you can talk that through, and with Rodney and I, sometimes I even had to write it out. It was emotions that I was feeling, and I would be so overwhelmed with emotion that I couldn't even communicate correctly. And it would get so heated between us just trying to communicate that I had to sit down and write some things out and just work them out and then read it to him or send it to him and explain my feelings. And we eventually, I learned how to trust. And trust is gained too. It's given and it's also gained.
Yeah, trust is the key word there, and the opposite of that, or what sometimes keeps couples from experiencing that high level of trust, obviously, is the fear. And whether it's something from the past, or maybe just the fear where we don't feel truly validated in what we say. For example, communication.
That's good.
When you think about a husband and wife or a young couple that's getting started in their early years in their marriage, and they're just sharing their hopes and their dreams or goals or aspirations or fears or concern, whatever it is, the goal is just to have open, transparent, honest communication without the fear of being made fun of, or where there's sarcasm or ridicule, or because the moment you open yourself up and you become vulnerable and you start sharing openly and transparently about something, and if that all of a sudden is being met by ridicule or sarcasm or condemnation or judgment, what happens? We suddenly now say, okay, well, I can't go there anymore because I can't trust him, or I can't trust her, to really just hear, what I'm trying to honestly and transparently communicate. So we have to just know that fear can sabotage trust. Yes. And so we have to do all that we can to help, once again, protect that and safeguard where we can be open and honest and transparent without any fear of being judged or criticized. And when we do that, there's a high level of trust that's established in our relationships.
That's a safe marriage.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you can do that.
Yes.
relationship.
Yes, that's good. So we've talked about the statement of I care about you, I trust you, and the next one is I need you. Ooh, I need you. That can be a tough one to get out of our mouths, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So true. I'm the oldest of four girls, and I kind of like charge the way sometimes, and I like to sometimes do things by myself, but there's nothing wrong with that. But when we're so independent, that the relationship is about two people, it's not about one person getting their way all the time.
Yeah.
And that's something that I also had to learn. This will just be a confessional session for me, but just that I need you, and what a gift to have two becoming one, and what God brings together is so powerful if we will surrender to that and come together and express that we need each other to be great. Yes. We like to say at our church, let's do great things together. And our marriage is the same thing. Let's do great things together.
Yeah, I think in our world today, with so many people in the workplace, so you have both husband and wife, working long hours during the day.
Right.
Sometimes those hours extend even after they get home, working at night. So there can be that independent or isolated, spirit or situation there that sometimes can cause just almost like we're together, we're like under the same roof, but at the same time we're kind of living separate lives.
Oh yeah. Right.
And separate agendas, and and it's kind of like, hey, you do your thing, I'll do my thing. And what happens even sometimes is that we can run into situations or try to carry burdens because we're maybe naturally wired to be self-reliant. Like I'll fix this, I can handle this, I grew up in a home where I had to pull myself up by my own bootstraps, and that's how I was raised, And what happens is that we're not allowing that oneness in marriage to come that brought us together, where we are sharing one another's needs. We're carrying each other's burdens. Right. And I like to tell couples all the time, stop trying to focus and fix your marriage, focus on your togetherness. Yeah. Because when you focus on your togetherness, that'll fix a lot of your problems.
That's good.
So just focus on your togetherness, because that will really drive you to doing things together, working through things together, communicating together, because pride says, I can do it my way, or I'm going to do it my way, or I don't need your help. Well, we all know what happens to pride, right? The Bible says that pride comes before a fall. And there's also that little letter right in the middle of the word pride, that little letter I mess things up all the time, and I get in the way. So we have to get rid of the I, and don't allow pride to get in the middle of the marriage that separates, because that creates a very toxic and unhealthy relationship very quickly, when pride and the sense of stubbornness and, I'm going to do it my way. And if that's the way you're going to be, well, fine, I'm going to do, that's all of that is opposite of what God desires. So we have to communicate to one another, hey, together, we need each other.
Yeah.
We're stronger and healthier, and we're better together.
Yes.
And so she can be strong in the areas where I'm weak, and vice versa. And that's the beauty of marriage. God takes two uniquely different individuals, good, bad, ugly, brings them together to create one. And we work together through those things. And one of the best ways to help reinforce that is to say, I need you. I can't do this on my own. And so we're stronger and better together.
It's great to figure that out too initially, when you, as early on in your marriage as possible. What are you good at? What are you weak at? And it may not be the same thing that maybe your father did or the husband did in the home that you grew up in. It may be different than the home that you have created with your husband that you're married to. And so, my dad paid the bills. Well, in our family, I pay the bills. Rodney hates numbers, and I kind of like numbers. So and we need each other. We need to figure our strengths and weaknesses out and complement each other.
That's good. That's good. So we're talking about 4 statements to build security in your marriage, and the last one is, "I love you."
That's right.
Yeah. How do you communicate that beyond words?
Well, it's interesting because, we've often probably have heard or maybe many of you have heard about the book. It's kind of an iconic classic book. I don't know how many gazillions of copies it sold, but Gary Chapman, but that famous book called The 5 Love Languages. That's a great tool because it helps us understand that there's different expressions of how we communicate love to one another. And that's where needs can be different. What my needs are going to be maybe different from what her needs are, but it's important that we understand that and we become a student of each other's needs, because it's one thing to verbally say, "I love you," but it's another thing to show and to demonstrate those actions, because like the old saying, actions speak louder than words. And so, and if you're not familiar with the book called The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, Dr. Gary Chapman, I highly recommend it. But just in a nutshell, I'll give you the cliff notes here. But the 5 acts of love, of the love language, is acts of service, physical touch, words of affirmation, gifts or tokens of affection, and quality time. And so when you think about those expressions or ways, if you will, that love can be communicated and demonstrated, we have to do it in a way that connects and is received by that individual in a way that is meaningful for them. Because, I may, for example, like my love language is in the area of, words of affirmation. That puts gas in my gas tank.
That's right.
And so when she speaks words of encouragement, words of affirmation to me, man, that lights me up like a Christmas tree. But I can speak words of affirmation and encouragement to her, and not that she doesn't want that, but at the same time, if I express my love to her through the physical touch of affection, that lights her up like a Christmas tree. So
we were talking off mic or before we got on camera about you and Ted as well, that Ted has really the gift of helps, and that was one of your greatest needs, right?
It's a perfect match. It's a perfect
match made in heaven.
That's right. He does laundry. He does all the laundry.
Ted's a stud.
Wow.
He does. He's a stud. He is.
Yes.
He's amazing. But yeah, that speaks my love language. And I think
awesome.
it's important to know too, I love the love language idea, and that speaks volumes, right? To let folks know I love you. And then what about these folks that really do have a hard time just getting those 3 words out of their mouths? I love you. Because some people weren't raised to say that to one another. How would you encourage folks to maybe do that more often if it's hard for them? Yeah.
Well, when you think about, I would be safe to say, especially in a marriage relationship, there was a time where it was probably easier to communicate it than maybe years down the road. It may grow increasingly more difficult or be more of a feeling of awkwardness to communicate it or verbalize that may not have been as true maybe before they got married or in those courtship stages. For some, it could have been difficult, but most it was probably easier. And maybe the reason why it was easier at a previous time in their life was because maybe there wasn't as much hurt or, so-called water under the bridge, or difficulties or hardships that sometimes can harden. Or again, if we feel insecure in the relationship, if there's a lack of trust, or there's whatever it is that's causing us to feel insecure, or there's fear, whatever it is, then that's going to inhibit us from verbalizing in a natural, comfortable way the words I love you if we're still carrying something in our hearts. And so we have to make sure that, the Bible says that God cast out all fear. Perfect love cast out fear. And so we have to understand that whatever it is that's inside of our hearts that's creating insecurity or fear about ourselves, about our spouse, our relationship, or even our past, we have to go to God, who loves us unconditionally, who loves us sacrificially, and we have to say, God, give me the grace to be able to show and to verbalize that same unconditional sacrificial love to my spouse. Because, and again, it go back to the togetherness. Togetherness fixes a lot of problems. And it's like what we talked about in previous episodes with children. The more quantity time that you spend with each other, the more quality time you're going to experience from those things. So it's a matter of sowing, and it's a matter of reaping those benefits.
Right.
So
I think, Linda, too, just to flip that around, your question about saying I love you. Sometimes in the culture in which we live, it's flippantly used as well.
That's true.
And there's no action behind it. There's no love really behind it. Say, I love you. I love you before you hang up on the phone. But yet you're not living that out. The Bible says that there's no greater love that any person has ever had than to lay down their life.
Yes.
So to really sacrificially love someone, when you say I love you, what's behind that, and I 100% understand where you're coming from, because there's even, I think, a generation behind us that maybe even had a harder time saying I love you than we do now.
Yeah.
But there's a commitment that when you say those words, you mean those words. There's power behind those words.
Absolutely. That's good. That's good. Well, we've been talking about the 4 statements to build security in your marriage, and Rodney and Michelle have broken down 4 incredible statements. I encourage you to write these down and become very familiar with them so that you can say them. The first is, I care about you, I trust you, I need you, I love you. So that's 4 statements, very powerful statements. I care about you, I trust you, I need you, and I love you. This was so good, guys. Thank you for sharing. And as we wrap up our time together today, we want to say thank you for joining us. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, because we'd love to hear from you and receive any questions that you'd like Rodney and Michelle to answer in future episodes. And again, hey, we'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. And listen, if you're interested in getting a copy of Rodney's new book, The Double Win, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can see this beautiful cover. This is a great cover. I know you didn't design it, but it's a great cover. I love it.
Our son had a lot to do with that design.
A beautiful book. Looks beautiful on the table.
Thank you.
What you can do to get a copy of that is just head on over to thedoublewin.club.com. Let me repeat that. That's thedoublewin.club.com. You'll learn more about Rodney and Michelle's family mentoring program. It is the ultimate double win. And until next time, we're here to help you win at home and win at life.